We're on to Act 3 of the Book of Ruth. We're looking at Chapter 4, and this is a chapter where the pace is going to pick up a lot in terms of plot. And I guess normally you would have the plot story, which would happen in Act 1 and Act 3, and then the internal character story that happens in Act 2. That's the middle half of the book. So we're returning to the plot side of the story. So in terms of the hero's journey, which I've been following in this series, the actual climax is not, there's not much of a struggle because as we've noted in Act 1, the behind the scenes protagonist of the book is God. So he enables Ruth and Boaz to show supernatural, superhuman kindness and loyalty to Naomi and to each other, and to God's plan. So the real hero of the story is God, and so we see that this book follows the hero's journey. But when we come to the battle and the climax, there is, to make a really good battle scene, we need an opponent that's a worthy opponent, and there is no worthy opponent. No opponent worthy of God. And so this Act 3 happens quite seamlessly. There's no problems. It's just bang, 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 it happens, because nobody can really oppose God. If he wants something to happen, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen without a struggle. So we don't see the struggle that we would normally see in the hero's journey in Act 3. So that's something really to note, but it's still an exciting story. A lot of people like the Book of Ruth, and it's exciting and it's satisfying. One reason that makes it satisfying is because a lot of good stories have not only that plot journey, the hero's journey, but they also have the character journey, or the internal journey. And in this story, it is the love story. So where the struggle is in the characters of Ruth and Boaz, who, as was noted in Act 2, appear to have fallen in love with each other. And so here they are faithful to God's purposes, and so they wouldn't get married in spite of God's plans. So Ruth is faithfully waiting to see the outcome, and Boaz is faithfully offering to the closer kinsman redeemer the option of redeeming Ruth along with Elimelech's field. So where the real excitement comes in the climax is in the where the conflict and where the struggle comes is in their patient waiting, in their living by faith, where they want things to go a certain way, but we're not sure whether it will. God's plans they're certainly going to happen. By this point, we can see that either way, Ruth will get a we have a lot of enemies lined up in the way. We see that there are two very good options for Ruth to have a kinsman redeemer, but there are enemies along the way that make it uncertain. First is Ruth and Boaz's feelings for each other. Then we have the uncertainty about the townsfolk, whether they will do it. And then, of course, there's always the uncertainty of whether they can have children. So we know that Boaz is quite old. Even if they do end up marrying, can they have children? So in this section, we see all of the opposition to this actually happening lining up in Act 3, and then they must all be defeated before the climax happens and the story goal is fulfilled or not, and then there's a new equilibrium established. So to make your telling of the story more exciting, I would add a layer of the love story as well as the so cross-cutting the hero's journey with the love story. The tracing out of the love story has been beyond the scope of this series. I've just been tracing out the hero's journey, but hopefully I don't know, maybe at some point I'll do something on the love story, on that internal character journey, and maybe you can draw up the convention, put in some of those conventions, or draw them out where they naturally happen in the story. A good resource on working out the conventions of the love story. So John Truby has some really good resources on the love story. I haven't been able to find his website for a little while. Maybe it's down, or maybe I just haven't been able to find it. But he does a really good lecture on the conventions of the love story. Also, Sean Coyne, that's spelled Coyne. He has a website called The Story Grid, where he does lots of conventions, and he calls them obligatory scenes, things that must happen in different genres of stories for them to be satisfying. So what he has to say about that type of story, and he breaks down genres very good detail. He's got lots of categories for genres. It's worth looking at his stuff, but I'll try and work through some of his things from the perspective of the Book of Ruth at some point, hopefully. Yes, but let's continue on with our hero's journey in this book, knowing that it's not going to be a big battle struggle. You can draw it out a little bit from the human perspective if you want, by focusing on the reactions of the people, but in terms of a real opponent for God, there is none, since he is the real hero of this journey. With that said, let's dive in to Act 3.